Last time on the Skip and Josh podcast.
I think they're going to suck. I think the whole situation is going to be a big joke. It's going to be a big disaster. And Kyler Murray is coming into a lousy team with not a lot of weapons, and he's going to be totally unprepared, and I just think the whole thing is just going to blow up. I wouldn't be surprised if Kingsbury's fired at the end of the season.
I mean, those are all interesting points.
You're listening to the Skip and Josh podcast with Skip Sherman and Josh Obadia.
I'm Josh in Toronto.
And I'm Skip in Montreal.
In today's episode, awful baseball uniforms.
Week 1 in the NFL.
And a Canadian wins a major tennis tournament.
But first, the latest on Antonio Brown.
Okay, Skip, we have a lot to talk about today because a lot has happened in the world of sports in the last, 5 days. But before we get into all that stuff, I need you to go into your time machine and think back 3 years ago. 3 years ago, before we had ever recorded an episode of this show, we were talking about what this show was going to sound like.
Right.
And we didn't even know what the show was going to be, what we were going to talk about, what the topic was going to be, what the format was going to be.
Well, I mean, we always had the idea it was just going to be us talking, right?
Yes, but was it going to be just baseball or just hockey or just
Correct.
football or just fantasy sports?
Mm-hmm.
We weighed, we talked about a lot of different topics, and eventually we decided on this format, which I like because if we had picked just one sport, then we'd have nothing to talk about for the other half of the year.
Right.
But there's one topic that we didn't even consider, and it would have given us all kinds of content on a daily basis, even on an hourly basis that we didn't even consider.
Just Antonio Brown 24/7?
That's it. We should have just done an Antonio Brown podcast and forget everything else.
Yeah, well,
because things change with him like hourly.
honestly, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday with Antonio Brown was crazy. It's like he got into a fight with his GM.
Then he apologized.
Then the next thing, there's a tearful apology in the locker room, supposedly. Then Gruden comes out and says he expects him to play. Then the next day, there's all this stuff saying he's going to get released. Then he is released.
Hold on, you missed something.
And then literally an hour after he's released, what did I miss?
After the apology, he posts on Instagram a recording of a conversation with him and John Gruden.
Yeah. But he basically is posting on social media saying that he wants to be released.
It was weird. It was just very weird.
He posted basically release me. And then when they did, the sketchiest part, which I know you have a lot of thoughts on, is how he ended up on the Patriots. It's just so
well, hold on. Before that,
garbage.
So I had been hearing all of the stuff going on for the last month, right? Obviously.
Yeah. Well, no, it goes back to the end of last year. He didn't want to practice. He didn't want to play with Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, I follow a lot of Pittsburgh people on Twitter, and at that time, you have no idea how many people were in Antonio Brown's side and blaming Roethlisberger for the whole situation, blaming Tomlin for the whole situation, and now everybody in Pittsburgh, all Steelers fans know exactly what happened. It's all Brown. It's all him.
So the funniest thing, I don't know if it's funny, but
yeah,
I didn't turn on the TV really most of the day Saturday.
Okay.
Until about 4:00, and we'll get into that in a minute. But
yeah.
I turn it on, and so I didn't know that he had been released.
Right. Because everything's happening so quickly.
But then I see on the ticker, Antonio Brown signed by Patriots, and I'm like, wait a minute, when did he even get released by the Raiders? I missed that.
Because he signed with the Patriots like an hour after he was released, which to me is the shadiest thing ever, because if there was like there's no chance there was no tampering there. Like, it's impossible, Well,
I don't know if there was tampering or not, but I mean, to be honest, obviously this makes the Patriots a better team, but you know what? They were already one of 2 or maybe 3 teams in that entire conference that had a chance to go to the Super Bowl anyway. So it doesn't really change much. I don't think they're going to go undefeated now because they have Antonio Brown. And for all we know, they might cut him in a month.
Look, the Patriots have a long history of picking up these guys that are sort of on the outs with their team. They've done it a million times. And usually the players buy in because they know it's kind of their last chance. And I don't know if Brown is going to see it this way, but if he can't make it work with the Patriots, he's going to be basically damaged goods for anybody else to sign him,
I'm surprised that they paid him as much as they're paying him. I'm really surprised,
I agree.
Especially
it's
the guaranteed $10 million.
It's a lot. It's well, look, I mean, he lost $20 million on the deal, Antonio Brown, on this whole deal.
Well, he lost 15.
Well, no, he gave up $30 million of guaranteed money. That's what when they suspended him and released him, he lost $30 million.
Right, but if he plays the whole season, he'll get 15, so it means he only lost 15, which he didn't really lose anything, because if he plays well, he'll get another $15 million contract next year.
Oh, I know. I mean, I think, but
yes, he's an
I was about to say, oh, he doesn't care about the money, but he does care about the money. That was what this whole thing was about from the start.
I don't think it was anything to do with money, because he's actually getting paid less.
No, I'm talking about why he said he wanted to get out of Pittsburgh. Contract and all this, and that's how it started, and then he ends I don't know.
So when all is said and done now, the Steelers look very smart.
Of course.
The Patriots are very opportunist.
The Raiders are screwed.
The Raiders are completely screwed.
Well, I mean, they didn't give up that much to get him when you think about it. I think it was a 3rd round pick and a 5th round pick. Supposedly, the Patriots had already offered the Steelers better picks, and they said no because they didn't want to trade him to what they consider a rival. So then they end up with him anyways, which I just find there's this whole conspiracy theory going around that this is what Brown wanted from the beginning, and he had no intention of ever playing for the Raiders, and he was just trying to force his way to New England. So
then I have a question. Why? First of all, why would you not want to play for the Raiders? I mean, okay, I get it. They're a bit of a circus, but he's the one who made them a circus. There's 32 teams in the league. What's wrong with the Raiders? They're not the worst team in the league. They're not the best team in the league. They're just a team.
No, they're just a team. But I'm saying if you go back to the end of last year, and I think there's this, and I'm not saying I buy into it, but I don't think it's that far-fetched, that he wanted out of Pittsburgh and he wanted to go to New England. But they didn't want to trade him to New England. So he forced his way out of Pittsburgh and then onto another team. And then he forced his way off of this team. He forced himself to get released knowing that the Patriots would sign him and he'd be a free agent.
But yet, when he got traded to Oakland, he actually signed an extension.
I know. That's what's bizarre. But look, that's what I'm saying. I don't necessarily buy into the whole conspiracy theory. I'm just saying that it's out there. It is highly coincidental that he signed within an hour after he was released.
Anyway, the other funny thing is that he can't officially sign until tomorrow.
I know. So unfortunately, he is missing the game tonight. We're recording on Sunday night.
Yes.
And wow, what a game that would have been! Pittsburgh versus the Patriots.
Huge.
I mean, it would have been nuts, no?
I mean, would he have played though? Because he hasn't practiced with them at all.
I don't know. I think there's this other conspiracy. The other conspiracy theory is basically that his feet are all screwed up, which
they are.
And that he can't even play, and he's embarrassed because he doesn't want to look stupid on the field. He doesn't want to look like he can't play, right? So the question is, do you know what helmet he's wearing when he plays on the Patriots?
I don't. No, I don't. But he's not the only guy who had to switch helmets this year. Tom Brady had to switch helmets, and Aaron Rodgers had to switch helmets, and there's a few other guys, and all of them just did it and didn't even complain.
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, but he's the only one that filed 2 grievances against the league because of it. No, everyone else just said, yeah, you know what? A 10-year-old helmet's probably not a good idea. Maybe I should get a new one. Right?
Anyhow, who knows what's going to happen tomorrow morning when I wake up? There could be some new news that, he yelled at Bill Belichick and they cut him.
Look, Tom Brady is famous for yelling at his teammates on the sideline. We've seen this 100 times.
Tom Brady can get away with things that certain other players can't get away with.
I know, but the first time he yells at Antonio Brown, what's going to happen?
I just hope I'm watching it live to see it.
Me too. That's all.
Actually, I'm wondering, where is Antonio Brown going to be watching the game from tonight? Is he going to be on the sideline? Is he going to be in the press box? Is he even going to be in the stadium?
I don't know. Well, I mean, as soon as we finish recording this, I'm going to go watch the game, and then we'll find out if he's there with the team or not,
enough Antonio Brown. We didn't think of doing an only Antonio Brown podcast 3 years ago. We should have thought of it. We probably would have decided against it anyway. I'm glad that we picked the format that we did.
Right.
So let's get into today's actual episode. And I think the only way that we're going to be able to make this work is if we go chronologically.
Okay, sure.
And I would like to start on Thursday, unless you want to start before Thursday.
No, you lead the way. I mean, I already texted you the basically the 3 topics I wanted to cover, and we've just covered one of them. So
going into Thursday, I mean, you and I, we watch the same sports shows, we listen to the same sports shows, we read probably the same websites. So
yeah.
I'm sure that all you heard about, because all I heard about was Chicago Bears, Green Bay Packers, NFL season opener Thursday night. That's all I heard about.
Yeah, but I mean,
going into Thursday,
it was everywhere. But like, I didn't even really watch that much of the game because I don't care about either of those teams. And it was just, to tell you the truth, I came home from France on Wednesday and I can't stay up late. I couldn't stay up late on Thursday. I just couldn't, you know?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because I actually watched maybe 2 minutes of that football game because I had planned to watch tennis, which I don't often watch.
Right.
But I wanted to see Bianca Andreescu.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so glad I didn't watch football because it turned out to be a lousy game.
Right.
And the tennis match was phenomenal. It was a very exciting match.
Right.
And it got her into the final. And I think there's only been 2 Canadian people to play in a Grand Slam final before.
This is correct.
And neither of them won.
That's right.
So,
Jeannie Bouchard made it to the final of Wimbledon once. And
Milos
Raonic also made it to the final of Wimbledon once.
So obviously a big deal. And to add to the excitement or the intrigue, Bianca is playing against, the best women's tennis player of all time in Serena Williams.
Right.
Although, as we all know, since she had her baby, she hasn't won a tournament.
Since she's come back, she's made it to the finals of many tournaments. She's lost.
Yeah.
She hasn't won anything.
And then a year ago today, or a year ago yesterday,
she had her meltdown.
There was a lot of controversy.
I remember we talked about it tremendously. I was thinking about how often, this is episode 151.
Correct,
right?
Yes.
So in the 150 previous episodes, how often have we actually talked about tennis?
Not very often.
And the only time I really remember it was Serena's meltdown last year in the match against Osaka, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the only other times we talked about tennis is maybe you mentioned that you were playing tennis.
Right.
Right.
Which I haven't done lately.
You yourself, joined the tennis club, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so Thursday I watched all of tennis, didn't watch any football. And, lately I've been watching a lot of baseball because of the pennant races, but I didn't watch any baseball at all on Thursday either.
Right.
I'm very happy with the choice I made to watch tennis. So then Friday was kind of like, it was the men's semi, I think.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And I watched a bit of it. But not much happened on Friday other than Antonio Brown posting something on Instagram.
Right.
So then we go to Saturday. This is why I only turned on the television around 4 o'clock or 4:30 because I wanted to watch the final of the U.S. Open women's singles.
Right. I mean, the whole country basically woke up that morning and said, wow, can we fast forward to 4 o'clock? Because we want to watch. I mean, I don't know if our American listeners realize how much of a story this Bianca Andreescu is in Canada and how the whole country was basically watching that match yesterday.
And that's when I found out about how, the Patriots signed Antonio Brown and all that other stuff. But
right.
I have to tell you, as I'm watching this tennis match,
yeah,
I'm getting so heated, anytime Serena would get a point, I'd get angry. And when Bianca would get a point, I'd be so happy.
Yeah.
And then
it was intense.
In the last set, when all the American fans were cheering so loud for Serena, I wanted them all to shut up.
Well, it's funny because the Bianca was a crowd favorite in all her other matches. I feel like the crowd was behind her all the way up to the final, and then as soon as she got into the final, it's like, wow, total. Not that they didn't like her, but I mean, the crowd was so pro Serena. It was obscene.
Yeah. And so for Bianca to overcome the crowd and the nerves and the best player of all time and to win that match was phenomenal. You don't know how happy I was. Like, I was almost, I'm not going to say I was as happy as, when Canada won gold in hockey.
Yeah.
But I was very, very happy.
Well, I mean, have you read articles this morning in some of the Canadian press? I mean, like, they're comparing Bianca's win in the US Open to like one of the greatest sports moments in the history of Canadian sports, like to go along with, like what you said, Olympic gold medals and like Paul Henderson's goal in 1972, like crazy, like iconic moments. And maybe it will be an iconic moment, but I mean, it certainly feels huge, but like you don't know how it's going to be viewed in 20 years from now.
No, but this is on par with Mike Weir winning the Masters.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think maybe, I guess it is. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And I think that year Mike Weir won Canadian Athlete of the Year, the Lou Marsh Award.
He did. Tennis players never won the Lou Marsh Award.
I think Bianca's going to win it.
She's 100% going to win it.
I mean, there's a few months left in the year, but still.
Yeah, but she's the fact that she won the US Open, it's a clincher. I mean, it's unfortunate. By the way, just so people know what we're talking about, the Lou Marsh Award is an award voted on by all the Canadian sports reporters, and it's for the Athlete of the Year, and every year they award this award, right? Often it's Olympians when it's an Olympic year. A lot of times sometimes it's been baseball players, a lot of hockey players, different sports. It runs the gambit of all different sports. Mm-hmm. But a tennis player's never won because, like we said, there's never been any good Canadian tennis players. I mean, up till 3 years ago, Canada basically never had a player in the top 10 our whole life,
Yeah, Carling Bassett was pretty good. I don't know how high she was ranked. But
Carling Bassett, I think, reached the top 10. That was like the early 80s.
Yeah,
right?
I was a big fan of hers.
But I think she made it to the top 10. But Josh, that's 30 years ago.
Is it that long ago? I'm old.
Well, whatever, however long, like it's ages ago. It's like 1984, I think, or something.
Then I'm old.
Made that. So our whole lives, there's never ever been actually any good Canadian tennis players. Until Jeannie Bouchard came around in 2014 and all of a sudden took the scene by storm. And then a couple years later, Milos Raonic, also established himself as one of the top men's players. And now actually Canada has quite a few players because there's Bianca in the women's side, but on the men's side, you have Milos Raonic, but also Denis Shapovalov, and then the other guy...
Felix Auger-Aliassime.
Yeah, so, I mean, Canada is looking good in terms of young tennis players, that's for sure, which is exciting, because I love watching tennis. All the majors are fun to watch,
So anyway, I'm very thrilled that Bianca won. I was also very impressed how she handled herself, almost like she expected to win in the post-game interviews maybe. And all that. I'm thrilled for her. I just hope that she doesn't fizzle out. Because you notice all these in the women's side, when someone wins a major, they tend to not repeat. Like Naomi Osaka hasn't won a major since. And
I was just going to say that.
That other
she
girl
won last year.
The American girl, Ashley Barty, she won a major and then hasn't won one since.
Yeah.
So it's like a revolving door with the women. It's not like the men's game.
The only consistency in the women's game over the last 15 years is that Serena's been the best player.
Right.
That's the only consistency, And on the men's side, well, you basically have 3 guys that win all the tournaments.
Right. Anyway, congratulations to her.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely congratulations to her. I mean, it was, like I said, what a huge story. And it's not often that there's something on television in this country where literally the whole country's watching, When it's not the Olympics and it doesn't have to do with hockey, for the whole country to be watching, that's huge, right?
Yeah, and I was watching. This is actually another thing I wanted to mention about the tennis. I complain about TSN a lot because they have 5 channels and they tend to show the same thing on all 5 channels quite often.
They do, yeah.
Which is frustrating. But this week they've actually been good because they've had like tennis on 2 channels and, baseball on another channel and football on another channel. So they've actually done some smart things this week. The other thing that I noticed is they had 2 different feeds of the tennis. So you could watch the American broadcast or you can watch the British broadcast, which I really enjoyed the fact that I could switch between the 2.
Well, I mean, I like watching the American broadcast. It's interesting because the analysts like Chris Everett or whoever was on McEnroe, like they think a lot of Bianca, like they like her, so of course they're all cheering for Serena. I mean, Chris Everett is 100% behind Serena every single match. It's crazy how much she's like pro Serena, but I mean, Bianca certainly has a really good reputation,
What I don't like about tennis in general is that post-game ceremony when they present the trophy to the winner.
Yeah.
The loser has to stick around, which I hate that.
And you know what? It bothered me yesterday. I mean, I know it's because it was Serena, but they interviewed Serena forever.
It seemed like it went on for a while.
Bianca's standing there waiting to get her trophy, and they're interviewing the loser for like 5 minutes,
Yeah. And I mean, the loser doesn't want to be there. I mentioned this during the World Junior Hockey Championships when one of the European kids who got silver, he threw his medal into the crowd or something because he was pissed that he didn't get gold.
Yeah.
And I don't blame him. You just lost. Like, you don't want to stand there and get a silver medal. Like, let me just go into the locker room and forget about it.
They just want to get out of there, right?
So, it was just a little annoying that the loser has to stick around. And because if I lost, I wouldn't want to stick around. And I'm sure Serena didn't want to stick around, but whatever. Mm-hmm.
So that was Saturday night.
Yeah. And then nothing else happened until Sunday.
The National Football League.
I asked you right when we got on the phone here, like, did you watch football today? And you told me you're going to find out.
Okay, well,
you'll find out.
Well, I have some specific questions for you.
Sure.
First of all, rapid fire.
Okay, rapid fire about NFL Week 1.
Yes.
Is that it?
Yes.
Okay.
There's only like 3 questions.
Sure.
Do you watch football with your son in the same room?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, especially when the Eagles are playing, we watch together.
Okay, that leads to my next question. When the Eagles are playing, does your son wear his Deshaun Jackson jersey?
No, today he was wearing Carson Wentz. Mm-hmm. Actually, my daughter took a picture of him today because he was wearing his Wentz jersey and he had this Eagles scarf on. Mm-hmm. No, the Deshaun Jackson jersey is too small.
Oh, really?
Because it's from when he was 13, right? So it's not that big. No, he had his Wentz on today.
Okay, I have another question. This is the most important one.
Mm-hmm.
So when you are watching with your son in the same room,
this
is a 2-parter, so let me finish.
Okay.
Who holds the remote control during the game, and is that person constantly changing the channel?
Okay, so it's funny you asked that.
It's a very really important question.
But it's really funny, actually. So I had the remote because I was downstairs first. I was there in front of the TV at like 1:45, and I was flipping through the pre-games, right, of the different channels, including NFL Network, which is a comprehensive pre-game because they don't just focus on the game that's going to be on like the specific network, So I had the remote, and then Matthew came down at 1, and he was like basically told me like, okay, you give me the remote. I'm going to control what we're going to switch to. So together we briefly look at the guide and see like what are going to be the 3 things we're going to switch to. And he had control, and I did not like it at all. Let's just say I didn't like it because like he switched away from the Eagles game when it was a timeout, and then I'm like, put it back, the Eagles are back on. And he's like, relax, it's still the commercial. I'm like, put it back, the Eagles are back on. He's like, relax, it's still the commercial, So most of the time, it was still the commercial. And maybe a couple of times I think he switched back like a split second too late, like so.
So one of the reasons I ask is because I don't like to flip around. Even if there's more than one thing that I want to watch, I don't like to flip around. So like today at 4:00, I put it on tennis and I left it on tennis. On Thursday night, I put it on tennis and I left it on tennis.
Yeah.
And
But
yesterday,
for football, I like to switch around.
yesterday, of course, I left it on tennis because there was nothing else to watch. I mean, there were some baseball
Mm-hmm.
games at 4:00, but I didn't care.
Right.
So today, I don't really particularly care about any team.
Right.
And there were, I think, 3 or 4 different games I could have watched, depending on what channel I put it on.
Right.
But I chose the Eagles-Redskins game for 2 reasons. One, I knew you would be watching it and we would talk
Okay.
about it.
Right. And the Redskins is
Well,
Tony
2, because
Kornheiser.
I know
Yeah.
Tony's going to talk about the Redskins tomorrow, and so I want to know what happened in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So I was so tempted to text you during the first half of the game because the Eagles were just getting destroyed.
Oh, it
And-
was nasty.
And I'm saying to myself, oh, I wonder if they're breaking any plates at the Sherman house.
It was just quiet in our house. It was just quiet.
So I figured, you know what, I better not text. I don't want to, wake
Yeah.
a bear,
Yeah.
not a Chicago bear. But anyway, so I didn't text you. I just wrote down a few things that I was going to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, lo and behold, the second half is a completely different game. I went to the bathroom for 5 minutes. I come back and the Eagles are up by 9.
Basically, the way I look at it is that, the Eagles are one of the teams that none of the offensive starters played during the preseason.
Right, but that you could say that about 20 teams.
No. Really, there's only 3 teams that none of the offensive starters played. Most teams, their guys played a little bit here and there, even a snap or 2, right?
Okay.
But so the way I look at it is that first half was like the preseason. They just weren't ready. They just were not ready, And then they came back in the second half with just the focus, and then they just trounced them. It wasn't even funny. The second half was absurd. When at one point they showed the time of possession and the total yards in the second half, and it was like, are there even 2 teams playing?
But I have to say, the Redskins looked really good in the first half.
They did, but I think it was mostly a case of the Eagles looking lousy.
Okay.
Look, are the Redskins a good team? No. Are they going to be competitive? Yes, I think they will be. I think they'll be in most of their games. Their defense is solid. And say what you want about Case Keenum, like my son did today, he's the one that said, he goes, Case Keenum's not bad.
No, he's an adequate quarterback.
He's going to keep you in games,
Right.
So I think the Redskins will be okay. But, are they going to be a good team? No, they're not.
By the way, I'm going to tell you, I'm not playing fantasy football. This is the second year in a row that I'm not playing fantasy football. And I'm thrilled that I'm not. Because how many injuries were there just today in week 1?
Oh, it's crazy. Nick Foles, come on.
I feel so bad for Jacksonville.
Not that Nick Foles is like a fantasy darling. Most people, he's not of any consequence in fantasy. But Jacksonville, they spent all this money. They finally think they got their quarterback, and then he goes out and breaks his collarbone the first 5 minutes of the game.
I think he broke it on a touchdown pass.
It's just a pity that if you're a Jaguars fan and you have all your hope in Nick Foles, and look, I'm always going to have a soft spot for Nick Foles because what he did for the Eagles, right? So it just sucks. It just sucks. That's all.
It really does.
But most of the games today were lousy. Not I say lousy. They were fine, but there was a lot of blowouts.
I only watched. That's the only game that I watched. Redskins Eagles. It's the only one I watched.
The Titans completely killed the Browns. So all those Cleveland Browns fans, it's the home opener, the season opener, the stadium's rocking. They're all ready to have a great season. All these Browns fans, they have such high expectations, and they come out and they get killed by Tennessee. Killed. So it's they didn't even show up, It's just, you never know what's going to happen in football, honestly. You just never know. And then the biggest performance of the week was Lamar Jackson, Baltimore Ravens. This guy just single-handedly took apart the Miami Dolphins.
Yes, but taking apart the Miami Dolphins is
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Miami Dolphins are not allowed to admit it, but there's a lot of accusations already that they're just in the full tank mode, and the season hasn't even started.
Of course.
Yeah.
As they should be.
As they should be.
You know what? What we forgot to talk about? We forgot to talk about all these trades where what's his name? Jadeveon Clowney got traded, and the
Seattle.
Dolphins traded their only good player.
It's so true. Clowney actually had a pretty good game for Seattle. I watched a little bit of that Seattle-Cincinnati game. Seattle barely won. They won 21-20. Clowney seemed to have a pretty big impact on the defense. I think he's exactly, what Seattle needed, and he's sort of their type of player,
Well, no one should be surprised that he had a good game.
Yeah, he's a great player, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Houston actually, I thought they were a good team until they traded away Clowney. They didn't get much for him, if I understand correctly.
They really kind of just gave him away. But you know how NFL trades are. NFL trades are never fair in terms of talent for talent. You're all guys that you think are great get traded for like a 4th round draft pick. It's like they just want to get rid of salaries and get a younger player. And I never understood like football trades. There's how they kind of orchestrate those. And did you see any of the highlights from the Arizona Cardinals game?
I didn't see any of the highlights, but it looked like Detroit had the game in hand.
They did.
It looked like Detroit had the game in hand. All of a sudden, I log on to the computer and I see that the game's in overtime. So it just goes to show you can't trust the Lions.
But you definitely can't trust the Lions. The only reason why I'm mentioning that game is because in our preseason, in our NFL preview, we spent a good amount of time talking about the air raid offense of the Arizona Cardinals. And literally up until 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, it looked like the air raid offense didn't even exist. Like, I didn't even know what was going on there. And then somehow Arizona staged a little bit of a comeback. But
both you and Neil weren't very high on the Arizona Cardinals going into the season.
No, I mean, I think Kyler Murray's going to have a dreadful year. Although, I mean, he kind of had a respectable day, all things considered. But I have a feeling his stats at the end of the year are going to actually look a lot better than they really are, just because of all the garbage time he's going to be in. Think of all the blowouts and all the yards he's going to pick up at ends of games. And I don't know. I just don't understand why they're rushing him, why they're throwing him into this fire right away. Let him learn. If he's the future of your team, why are you throwing him into this big mess? Just don't get it. It's kind of
who would they start at quarterback if not him? They don't have anyone else.
It's like they know they're in a rebuild. They want to build a team around him. Like I said when Neil was on last time, the Chiefs sat Mahomes for a whole season. They sat him on the bench and said, "Okay, you're gonna learn." And then the next year they brought him in, and now the rest is history. And by the way, Mahomes had a huge day, obviously, today.
The Chiefs that year did have a decent quarterback in Alex Smith.
No, they did, but he learned from Alex Smith and then was ready to take over the offense the next year.
It's not the same situation in Arizona. There's nobody like Alex Smith in Arizona.
No, that is true. The Chiefs picked up right where they left off last year. Just destroyed Jacksonville. Wasn't even close. I had Jacksonville defense in one of my fantasy pools. They ended up with -6.
That's terrible.
-6.
You would be better off having no defense at all.
Absolutely, 100%. And the other team that was a complete no-show today, and I don't want to necessarily go through every single game, but the Atlanta Falcons were a complete no-show today. I watched a little bit of the highlights, and it's like, I don't know what happened. Maybe Matt Ryan's no good anymore. Maybe it's just first game, like I said, lack of preseason, but Matt Ryan looked lost. And the only thing Atlanta can take out of their loss is that, okay, it was on the road and the Vikings, and maybe the Vikings defense is really, really good, but Atlanta really didn't do anything,
So there are 3 teams that I will never put any money on.
Yeah, which is?
One of them is the Atlanta Falcons. The other 2 are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Carolina Panthers.
For me, there's only one team. It's the New York Giants.
I trust the Giants. I trust the Giants more than those 3 teams I just mentioned.
The Giants have screwed me so many times over the years. It's like I cannot trust them at all.
But the thing is with Atlanta and Carolina, people actually think that those teams are good, but they're actually not.
Well, I don't know. I think Carolina maybe is good. No?
Since they went to the Super Bowl, what have they done?
No, they haven't done much. But I mean, a lot of that is because Newton's arm is like falling off.
That's a problem if you're a quarterback.
Absolutely. Like, he has a bad shoulder, right? So, I mean, that's why he didn't play like most of the second half last year, just simply because of that.
And also, speaking of, Super Bowls, Atlanta hasn't done anything since they went to the Super Bowl either.
No, they've been terrible. Like I said today, like a complete no-show from the Falcons today really surprised me. Honestly, it's just very, very shocking. And the Panthers, they almost beat the Rams today. It was 30-27. They're right in the game, but the Rams are going to be a decent team, I guess. Although, the one thing that I always try to avoid, which is exactly what we're not doing here on this show, is you can't overreact to week one scores.
No, you can't.
You just don't know. You can't,
Because, as you said, this is really preseason for 90% of the teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't know actually who's good, So yeah, of course we all know the Chiefs are going to be great. Like we kind of knew that, right? Because their offense was so ridiculous last year. And but some of the other blowouts, you just don't know. Like maybe it's going to be, maybe we're going to find out that the Detroit Lions defense is great, and that's why they were able to stop Arizona. Maybe we're going to find out that the Titans are going to be a dominant team this year. That's why they blew out the Browns. We don't know. You don't know, right? Like we have to let the season unfold.
Major League Baseball.
Can we talk a little baseball?
Baseball?
Well,
holy smokes.
It is September.
Sure, let's go for it.
First of all, I don't like the fact that Major League rosters expand to 40 on September 1st. I don't like it at all.
But that's been going on for our whole lives.
I know, but it's not a good rule. It's so you play the whole season with one set of rules, and then September, it's like a completely different set of rules.
Okay, now I know we went chronologically starting on Thursday, but there is something that happened that we never talked about that happened a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
That was the Players' Weekend.
Uh-huh. I have it written down here. It's on my list. I want to talk about it.
The guy whoever invented those monochrome uniforms, that was a criminal offense.
It was awful.
That is so bad. Those uniforms were so bad. The white ones,
the black ones were just as bad because you couldn't read any of the names on the back. So the players are allowed to put their own nicknames on there.
I know.
And you can't even read them.
That's what I didn't understand, because you have this weekend where the whole point is that you can have these nicknames. No one can read them because it's black on black and then white on white, right?
Yeah, this whole new fad where tone on tone or whatever they call it.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It's not a good thing.
Did you notice in the NFL today there was a lot of teams that had the white hat?
Oh, that was awful.
Yeah,
it was probably
really
the same
bad
guy who thought of this Players' Weekend uniform designed these hats that the coaches were wearing on the sideline today. By the way, what you also didn't mention is the team that's wearing those all-black uniforms, a lot of them play day games on Saturday and Sunday. I don't think it was very comfortable wearing all black on a hot, sunny day.
I think the black in the sun is an overrated concept.
I don't think so.
I'll give it to you.
But, it reminded me, I know you didn't watch this, but the NHL All-Star Game last year where one of the teams was wearing all white.
Yeah, terrible.
It was awful.
I feel it's like some guy had this idea, oh yeah, we're going to do white on white. It's going to be so nice. And then it sucks, but the other sports are oh, well, the NHL used it in their All-Star Game. Why don't we do the same thing? And then the next thing you know, the NBA has it. And then the NFL's oh, did you see the Miami Heat had the white on white jerseys? So let's do that too. And just the one bad idea just keeps replicating itself, right?
It just goes to show you can have a bad idea and you still get to keep your job.
Ugh. Anyways, okay, so I just wanted to touch on the uniforms, but we can fast forward to present day now, and you can go back to what you actually wanted to talk about.
Well, there's
baseball.
only two other little quick things about baseball that I want to mention.
Sure.
I don't know if you saw, I think this happened less than a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
There was a line drive back to the mound and a pitcher got hit in the head.
Yeah, I saw.
So, and this is not the first time this has happened.
No, but I mean, it's been going on for 100 years.
So my question is, why do pitchers in baseball not wear helmets while they're pitching? I don't understand.
It would be very uncomfortable, don't you think?
Would it?
But you'd figure
you can hit with a helmet on, you can run the bases with a helmet on. Why can't you pitch with a helmet on?
But you'd figure there's a lot of technology now. like, it doesn't have to be a metal or plastic or whatever helmet, but there's a lot of technology now with like Kevlar and like lighter weight protective gear, you know?
You know, John Olerud wore a helmet in the field every inning he played.
I know, but he wasn't a pitcher.
Okay, but I mean, the pitcher doesn't have to run around. He has to pitch.
I know.
I mean, yeah, it probably would get really warm in there. I get that. Because those helmets are not the coolest thing.
Unfortunately, it's going to take a devastating incident where a pitcher is badly injured on a line drive for anything to change, right?
Yeah. So the only other thing I wanted to mention about baseball is, for some reason, Sportsnet's been showing a lot of New York Mets games, I guess because they were hot lately and now they're cold and whatever. So I've been watching a lot of New York Mets games because there's nothing else to watch. This was before football started and before tennis started.
The Mets are actually a fairly exciting team.
However, if you've ever seen a Mets broadcast with you know, the local New York Mets broadcast team, Keith Hernandez is such a homer. It's disgusting.
But don't you think that every local broadcast teams are homers for their team too? Like,
they are. You're right. However, if you recall, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when we were listening to Expos games, Dave Van Horn was not like that.
No, he wasn't. You're absolutely right. He wasn't.
And so
I don't know how he is now on the Marlins broadcast, but
and so when I first heard another broadcast of another team, I don't remember.
It's shocking. Right?
The first time I ever heard one after hearing only Dave Van Horn my entire life, I couldn't believe how much of a homer that guy was. I don't remember who it was.
Right.
But the guy who does the White Sox games, he's terrible also. And
That's
Dennis
Ken
Eckersley with the Red Sox, he's terrible.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think
Jerry Remy too.
Jerry
is with
Remy,
the Red
that's
Sox.
another one.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Well, the Yankee ones are the worst, right? John Sterling and
Yeah. So, but anyway, I just happened to be hearing a lot of Keith Hernandez lately, so that's all.
Do you like the Mets? I like their team, actually.
I like them, but unfortunately, they're not going to do it this year. They blew it.
No, I mean, their bullpen, just like many teams, is super flawed. But Pete Alonso is certainly an exciting player.
That's for sure, yes. You would think that with the pitching rotation they have, they would have had a better season and they have a bright future, but you never know.
Well, they had so many blown leads. You see the stats of how many blown games they have?
I didn't.
It's absurd. It's crazy, like, how many leads they've blown. And it's not just one pitcher. Well, I mean, look, the guy Diaz, who's still the closer somehow, is getting all the blame. But it's not just him. Although he's certainly stinks, but it's not just him. I'm looking forward to the baseball playoffs. Who are you going to be cheering for? We didn't even talk about Justin Verlander's no-hitter.
Yeah, because it's already the third one he's thrown, so it's like, you know, what are you gonna say?
I mean, he's so dominant. He's like better than ever, don't you find?
Yeah, I'm impressed because his last year in Detroit,
Right.
or his second to last year in Detroit, he wasn't that good, and it seemed like maybe his career is on the downslide.
He completely reinvented himself when he came to Houston.
Yeah,
don't you find?
Totally.
Yeah, and the numbers show that, like, this year, last year, since he's come to Houston, he's actually better. Those are the best years of his career, other than like the one like mental crazy year. Remember, he had 1 year in Detroit where he was like, he couldn't lose a game. You know. So it's between him and Garrett Cole for the Cy Young in the American League, right?
Is it just between the two of them? I haven't looked at the stats.
I mean, it seems like it's their one and their number one. It's between the two of them and their teammates. So it's kind of interesting, you know. I think Verlander will get it just from name recognition and the fact that he threw the no-hitter.
Right, and he's older, right?
Yeah.
And if he doesn't, then we get a good tweet from his girlfriend, his wife.
Well, I mean, I saw all the stuff she put on social media when she was watching him throw the no-hitter, so it's always fun to see.
I didn't see any of her tweets.
No.
I just remember the tweet when he didn't win the Cy Young a year or two ago. That was funny.
She wasn't happy.
No.
Before we sign off, remember, you can listen and subscribe to new and archived episodes of the Skip and Josh podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and of course, Spotify. If you listen to the show through Apple Podcasts, please leave us a review. We would love to hear from you via email, skipandjoshshow@gmail.com, via Twitter @skipandjosh, or by liking and following our Facebook page. As always, you can get all the links to everything I just talked about on our website, skipandjosh.com.
We leave you with this.
Do you have anything you want to close the show with?
Yes. I was watching, I don't know what sporting event in the last few days, and a commercial comes on for the Microsoft Surface.
Right.
I think it's an American commercial.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen it. And it's just some guy. It's not like a famous person. Some guy talking about the Microsoft Surface and saying how good it is and comparing it to the MacBook. But the guy's name, his full name, is Mackenzie Book. But they call him MacBook for short. And
The guy's name is MacBook.
And MacBook is telling you how good the Microsoft Surface is.
I haven't seen the commercial. I gotta go watch it.
It was brilliant.
It really, really is quite clever, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I'm gonna go find that commercial right now. Gotta watch it. So, Josh, we do talk about music on the show from time to time.
Of course.
I just ran across this on Twitter and I was like, wow, what a stat. I gotta save this for our show to tell Josh. In 2019, by the time this year is over, it will be the first year since 1986 that vinyl is going to outsell CDs.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
It's a crazy stat, no?
I mean, I knew vinyl was making sort of a comeback.
Yeah.
And nobody buys
CDs are basically
anymore.
CDs have been dead for at least 5 to 10 years, but I guess people still do buy them, and compared to vinyl, right? So.
Well, the thing is, because most people buy their music digitally now, but if you're not going to buy it digitally, if you're going to go to a store and buy a physical thing, you're definitely not buying a CD, and you're definitely not buying a cassette. So your only option is vinyl.
Vinyl still only accounts, despite the fact that it's overtaking CDs, it still only accounts for 4% of overall revenue for music, and like subscription services like Spotify and Apple Music make up 62%.
What makes up the other 28?
I don't know. I can send you the
is.
article that has all the info, but yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Fascinating.
I just thought it's interesting, right?
It
because
is.
our whole life we grew up with vinyl, and then we switched to CDs, and CDs seemed like the be-all end-all for a little while, right?
It's kind of difficult for me to go on the subway and listen to vinyl.
That's true.
Like, imagine me holding my turntable while on the subway and then having to go into my pocket to get my bus pass.
Let me tell you, if that was happening, people would be looking at you on the subway and saying, "Look at that guy. He's pretty cool, no?" What a hipster.
I don't know about that.
What a hipster.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, what a hipster. All right, Josh. I don't know when we'll record next. Probably after the NFL seems to keep us on schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll speak to you next time.
Okay.